I remember I figured out the only game plan I had was to call into talk radio shows and start spitting game. And first year I do this, a lot of this. You're a what? Numerologist. Click. They don't want to talk about it at all. Eventually, I got on some radio stations, and I was pretty good at this. Spitting game. People thought I was crazy, but I'm interesting. And I hooked up with a guy in Cleveland by the name of Mike Trevisano. If there's one person who helped me off a little bit in life, it's him. Who wasn't related or something like that. And Mike had the #1 talk show in Ohio. It was a 50,000 watt radio station, which means half the country could listen to it. Even though it's a radio station in Cleveland, the signal was that powerful. Nowadays with the internet, you can listen to anything you want, but back then it was just radio. So people could listen from half the nation. And the thing about Mike was he was lazy. He really didn't want to, do work. He's an old man, wants to gamble all day. That's all he talked about, just playing cards. Every day he had some fucking people at his cards house playing cards when it was illegal to gamble for money. But, he's a superstar. He can get away with it. Eventually, he figured out that he didn't need to do prep work if he just called me in. Because if you call me in, I'm good enough to talk for about 2 hours. There's commercial breaks. The shit's easy, man. I'm good content, whether you love me or hate me. I'm good content. So this guy literally had me on for years.
Wow.
Years. I was so recognized that internet radio stations were giving me jobs. Oh, you go on Triv? Oh, you're that dude? Just giving me jobs on internet radio. Paying me to fucking talk. This is 2008, 2009. I used to go to restaurants and people would pay like about $200. Remember, it's long, like decades ago. They get a lunch and a reading with me. And I'd just sit there for like 5 hours to give readings to about 40 people. And they promote this shit through the radio station. So I'm already starting to make a little bit of bread off this in 2009. In 2007, we'll backtrack a little bit. Still broke at that time, but I got a little bit, got a name at least. Everyone in the city knows who I am. It was LeBron James, a couple politicians, and then me. And I decided, let's go after all the sports teams. I got the, bullhorn. Let's do it, because that radio station, WTM 1100, where Mike Trevisano worked, it was the flagship station for the Browns, the Cavs, and the Indians, all the Cleveland baseball teams. And the Indians are what they used to call the Guardians. Now it's politically correct. I still call them the Indians, though. So I went after all those teams, and I basically went to their offices, insulted them on the radio. The guy got a following, so people, and this guy wants me to talk shit because it gets him a following and stuff. So it got to the point, I start first with the Browns. I remember I'm downtown Cleveland. I get a phone call, and he's like, "Son, my name is Lou Marletti. Do you know who I am?" I'm like, "Damn, that's a cocky motherfucker." I'm like, "No." He's like, "Google me. I'll call you back." What the fuck is this mafioso motherfucker, right? I Google Lou Marletti, as I'm sure you guys are doing right now. Former head of the Secret Service under Bill Clinton. Now a vice president for the Cleveland Browns. Fuck. Calls me back. Take some bass out of my voice that time. And he's like, "Son, Cleveland Browns don't want anything to do with you." I'm like, "Listen, I think you guys need to draft Adrian Peterson, born 3/21, 1985, because I think he's next Jim Brown." Now, do you know who Adrian Peterson is?
No.
Okay. Adrian Peterson turned out to be a Hall of Famer. He turned out to be one of the best running backs in NFL history. Not just for a couple years. History. And they put a restraining order on me because I told him to draft that guy.
How insistent were you on them drafting?
Very. Very. Emails a couple times a day. I gave people readings. to get their emails because no one believed I could do this. And as soon as I did, they would just give me. I remember Michael Savage, Phil Savage was his name. Phil Savage was the GM's name. And I got to his secretary. Somebody gave me a secretary's number. And I'm like, I need to talk to Phil Savage. And she's like, who are you? I'm like, I'm Gary, the numbers guy from the Triv show. She's like, oh, I heard about you. She's like, it wasn't good things. I'm like, give me your birthday. And if I can't nail you, hang up. I will never call again. She gave me her birthday. I did my thing. She gave me Phil Savage's email. I started emailing this guy. The problem with him, he was a priest. Evangelical priest, and this is satanic to him. Yeah. In the end, I got basically restraining order off Cleveland Browns Stadium for a couple years. So that's how that one ended. 0 for 1. Next, Cleveland Cavaliers. I was talking to a guy by the name of Mr. Winger. Yeah, I promised I'd make you famous too, motherfucker. I don't know where this motherfucker is right now, but me and him came to an arrangement. He's like, prove numerology and astrology work. I'm like, okay. There's going to be 3 players who are going to be injured. Joe Johnson, Jason Kidd, and then Gilbert Arenas. Can you look up Gilbert Arenas on your phone real quick? See what happened? This is 2007. Go to him on Wikipedia. So after Joe Johnson gets hurt, I email Mr. Winger. I'm like, is this enough? He's like, no, that's only 1 out of 3. And then Jason Kidd gets injured. I email Mr. Winger. Mr. Winger says, this is not enough proof. This is only 2 out of 3. I'm like, God damn, motherfucker. I just gave you the list last month and 2 already hit. And Gilbert Arenas, if you're watching this, man.
He tore his MCL.
Yes. There's nothing personal about this, but after Mr. Winger said 2 guys didn't mean anything, I went to Dan Gilbert, the owner of the Cleveland Cavaliers himself. I got emails to back all this shit up. And I said, the people in your pack are low IQ. What about the wolf himself? Because he has one of those sayings, the strength of the wolf is the pack and the strength of the pack is the wolf. So I basically insulted his pack. I'm like, what about the wolf? He emails me back. He's like, if Gilbert Arenas gets injured like you say he will, me and you going to do business. I believe it was 4/4/2007 when it happened. Is that right? Was it that day? 4/4/2007?
It was a game against the
Washington Wizards.
It was the Charlotte Bobcats.
Yeah, okay.
And Gerald Wallace fell on his leg. So, Charlotte Bobcats, I believe so. It was in April.
Yep, it was 2007, April. And one of my buddies called me and said, yo, Gilbert's done. Again, nothing personal, Gilbert. I was celebrating. I thought I made it. I had a deal with the billionaire owner of the Cleveland Cavaliers. If something happens...
It was 4/4/2007.
Yes, it was 4/4. Again, I remember that date. It's like 9/11 to me because I thought that's the day I thought I made it. Yeah, right. I asked Dan when we're gonna meet. He doesn't answer. A month answer. It goes by. I'm like, yo, we had an arrangement. He sticks Howard Cross, head of Cleveland Cavs security, to make sure I don't bother anyone in the Cavs or anyone. I was pissed. Wait a second. I got everything right and I'm still fucking banned? Oh, by the way, they banned me from the arena too. I was pissed. I was so mad. I promised I'd get even with that guy. We'll get into that in a little bit. I promised I'd get even with that guy. Cleveland Indians were the only ones who were respectful. Mark Shapiro was the general manager of the time. Chris Antonetti was the assistant GM. They were very respectful. Just couldn't close them. But at least they listened to me. So, again, shout out to them. So, again, no one ever tried what I did in 2007. Failed, no doubt. But I got to the owners, I got to the GM, got to all these people. Good learning experience that you can be fucking right and still lose. That was a good learning experience. Helped out a lot later in life. Flash forward 2010. I'm bigger than I ever was in Cleveland, local celebrity. I'm on the Trevisano show. I say LeBron James is leaving Cleveland. I got a big name at that point. Like, if I say something's happening, because I just called the stock market crash in 2008, 2009, I called all this stuff. People, when I say something, people pay attention. And this part, people can look up on YouTube, put in Gary the Numbers Guy, Dan Gilbert. It'll come right up. And I'm just basically saying LeBron's gone. Guess who calls in the radio station? Dan Gilbert, owner of the Cavs. Starts with an insult. And I'm like, okay, brother. He's gone. He's leaving. And he's like, he's not going anywhere. He's going to light it up like Las Vegas. That's what he kept saying. After LeBron left to the Miami Heat, see a little trend of Cleveland going to Miami? I bet you had more influence to them than you, LeBron. After that happened, Dan Gilbert was getting roasted. Absolutely roasted. Like, everyone hated him because they knew the Cavs are going to suck now. And I'm going in on this guy. See, the numerologist is better than the billionaire. Just going in. Get to my radio job. It was called Sports Talk Cleveland back then. Get called into Belfie's office. He was the guy who ran it. Liberal fucking scumbag, but you know, it is what it is. He used to tell me I should have more respect when I talk about Obama. Get the fuck out of here. Give a fuck what you say. Anyways, he calls me in the office. He's like, I got good news and bad news. I'm like, all right. What's the good news? He's like, your ratings are wonderful. You know, you're the top guy here. I'm like, cool. What's the bad news? It's like, you're fired. I'm like, what? I'm like, this isn't computing. He's like, the Cavs told him that if they want credentials to go to Cavs games as reporters, as press, because it's internet radio, they don't have to give it out back in those days. They had to fire me. Came straight from the top. So again, I'm right again. Billionaire fucking flexes on me and gets me fired.
This guy doesn't like you.
No, he doesn't. I'm like, all right. So now I got no job. I got some clout in Cleveland, Ohio, which, trust me, isn't much. And still got a felony. And this shit is not quite working. Need a new game plan. I can't do it in Cleveland. I could, you know, I'll make enough to survive, but I'll never do anything in Cleveland. 2011, I start going to the NBA Summer League with my little pamphlets about how all NBA players add up to this, why certain players get injured all the time. Penny Hardaway's a 7, Grant Hill's a 7. Pass this stuff on. Most of these guys think I'm fucking nuts. You know, they're like, how'd you get in here? You know, shit like that. And because I study this stuff. The NBA Summer League is the only place where you can come in contact with these players, in contact with these closest, like this. You can come start talking to them. Can't do that in the NBA. I mean, can't do that in NFL. Can't do that in Major League Baseball. Can't do that anywhere else because there's a distance. But in NBA Summer League, everyone's close. So I decided to target that. Couple guys liked me and started listening, but they were nobodies. They were like very low men on the totem pole in the NBA. Well, those nobodies turned into somebodies in about 2013. And without mentioning any names, people can figure out who the names are themselves. In 2013, I saw that there was a team that was on the rise. They were called the Golden State Warriors. And there was a kid named Steph Curry. You ever hear of him?
Yeah.
Yep, and Klay Thompson. And the reason I liked them so much was, and I released this information, so I don't care, is because 7 and 11 are like soulmates. Those two numbers get along so fucking well together. I always recommend that 7s and 11s marry each other. And obviously Steph is a 7 and Clay is an 11. So I saw that. I'm like, yo, this team's going to do something in the future. And there was a player who was on the Denver Nuggets, and he was about to go to Memphis. And I'm like, hell he is. He's the missing piece. I talked my guy, who basically is the head guy in his team, into going to Golden State. He talked to Jerry West, who's the logo of the NBA, who was the GM of the Golden State Warriors at the time. And based off my advice, he convinced him to get this player. This player who they got in 2015 ended up being the NBA MVP of the NBA Finals. They won the chip because of this dude. You know who they beat?
Cleveland?
They beat the Cleveland Cavaliers. So the numerologist who was fired in 2010 from his radio job by the billionaire got his revenge 5 years later, where he stripped the fucking Cleveland Cavaliers of the NBA title, because if that guy, fuck, I'll say it, Andre Iguodala, doesn't sign with the Golden State Warriors in 2013, if he does, he's not the NBA MVP in 2015, and that dynasty never happens. And by the way, that's the same Golden State Warriors that beat the Cavs in 2017, 2018. I took 3 titles away from Dan Gilbert. 3 titles away from LeBron James. Think about it this way. If it's not for me, LeBron James right now is called the GOAT. He's won 4 NBA titles. I took 3 away from him. He would have had 7. He would have had more than Michael Jordan. I am the exact reason LeBron James is not called the GOAT. And all started because Dan Gilbert got me fired from a radio job. But that's all I had back then. It's just interesting how things go full circle, don't they? And Mr. Gilbert is not going to respond to this because he caught a stroke quite a while ago. Maybe it was because Golden State beat him. Who knows? And I don't think he's in any condition to do interviews anymore. At the end of the day, basically goes like this. Be careful who you step on. Never know how it's going to turn out in life.